Abdominal aortic aneurysms are considered to be a dangerous health threat by many in the medical community, but have you ever even heard of one before? The Find the Answers campaign is looking to raise awareness of this condition. And joining me now with more information is former Super Bowl winning quarterback Joe Theismann and Dr. James Underberg, clinical assistant professor at the Department of Medicine at NYU. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here with us today. Now, if you wouldn't mind, please, first of all, showing us your colorful suspenders that you both have on. Those are great.
There it is.
Orange suspenders.
And these are part of the campaign,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Well, actually, we went shopping together.
Right.
Yeah, it is actually.
To raise awareness. But before we get into that, if you wouldn't mind explaining exactly, Doctor, what AAA is.
AAA stands for Abdominal Aortic Aneurysm, and what it is basically is an enlargement or ballooning of the main artery in the center part of our chest called the aorta. And over time, this can slowly start to enlarge, and if it becomes large enough, it can actually burst. And when it bursts, in most cases, it's fatal.
And it's shocking to hear that it is the third most common cause of death in men over 60.
Yeah, sudden death.
Sudden death.
Yeah, men over 60.
And you have a personal relation or a personal experience with AAA.
My father was diagnosed with it. My father's had a history of heart problems. He had open heart surgery 23 years ago. But when you start to look into this particular AAA, you start to find out that there are a lot of other elements that go into it. And for my dad, he was a smoker. He was over 60 and he had a heart problem. Well, those are symptomatic of what possibly could happen. But my dad was diagnosed with it, and after he had his heart surgery, one of his physicals was given, and they found out that he had the aneurysm. I'd heard that he had an aneurysm, didn't know exactly what it was. And then all of a sudden you find out it's the abdominal aortic aneurysm, and you start to learn more. And the reason why we wear the orange suspenders is it's in this section of the body. And so this is the focal point that you really want to look at and say, this is an area. If you go get a physical, and I've had umpteen of them, you never ask for an ultrasound in this area.
Right.
And what we really want to do, both Jamie and I have really tried to partner up and say, listen, it's very, very important that first of all you get an annual physical. But secondly, most physicals don't offer that. So take the time to say, I'd like the ultrasound in the abdominal aortic area to find out if there is a problem, because as we've said, the diagnosis is very difficult.
And you, of course, have had this screening because one of the things that you do, you said, doctor, earlier, that when someone is diagnosed with this, you should call their children and say you should get a screening as well, because there is a genetic component, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we actually, when we make the diagnosis, suggest to the patient, pick up the phone and make sure your family knows about this so they can tell their physician and get screened. And
describe the screening process to us, Joe.
It's simple. It's like an ultrasound for a young lady or a woman that has a pregnancy. So what it is they just take and you lie down. It's non-invasive at all. It's simple. As a matter of fact, we were just on Medicaid pays for it.
Great.
Well, gee whiz, there's something that's unique in itself.
That should tell you something.
But what you do is you lie down as part of the physical, you lie down on the table and they do a little ultrasound in this area. That's all it is.
And what are they looking for?
They're looking for an enlargement, and actually you can see this tube that should be straight start to balloon out.
Right.
It's really that simple. It's kind of like making balloons in the park, and they start to open up in the center. If it opens up enough, it bursts. And when it bursts, 90% of the time, people die from it.
Unbelievable. And who's most at risk?
Well, it's interesting. Over the age of 60, men 5 times more common than women, smokers, people who have high blood pressure, people with high cholesterol, people with a history of heart disease. So that's a large number of people who are at risk. Basically, any man over the age of 60 should absolutely be screened for this. Any woman over the age of 60 who's got any of these risk factors. And if you've got a family history, you've got to start earlier, 50 or maybe even earlier than that.
And Joe, your dad was extremely lucky because so many people who have their first experience with it leads to death.
It does. There are no symptoms that you can look at, like a shortness of breath or stuff like that my father has had with other issues. What happens, it just comes. It has the term silent killer, because it creeps up on you and all of a sudden it's gone. But you can find a lot more about it at findtheanswers.org.
And your father's doing okay?
He's doing great. Played 3 weeks ago, went out, he's 89 years old, shot 90 on the golf course, and was upset. Yeah, I could have played better. I said, we can all do things better, Dad, but the fact that you're playing is so wonderful.
Good for him.
Really, it's because of this detection, and it was because of the physical that I have my father with me today. I'm convinced of that because when they told me he had an aneurysm, I didn't know exactly what it was, and then I found out further it was the abdominal aortic aneurysm. And if it wasn't for like I say, the doctor noticing and saying, let's do this, let's have this added to the physical.
Yes.
My dad may not be with me today, so I'm very thankful.
Is there an ongoing treatment that he has to receive?
Not that I know of, Doctor.
The treatment is basically threefold. Early on, we can actually do some things to prevent it from enlarging.
Okay.
Once it enlarges above a certain point, about 2 inches, then what happens is it needs to be removed. And that can either be done by physically going in and operating and removing it, or now actually going in through the artery and doing what's called an endovascular repair. And that's where a vascular surgeon would come into play. But again, taking care of it sooner rather than later is the way to deal with it.
The other thing too, real quick, is that it's an opportunity to be able to live a longer life. Early detection means early diagnosis means early treatment, and if you can get early treatment, it lengthens your life. Right. And it's really something you want to be able to do. Share time with your children. Think about the quality of life. This is one of those things. When you hear the term cancer, you hear the term autism, people's ears perk up. But you hear abdominal aortic aneurysm, everybody goes, what's that? Well, that's why we're out here trying to enlighten people and just let people know that this is a very serious condition and should be treated.
Bottom line, get that yearly screening. Right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much to both of you for being here today. And be sure to visit the findtheanswers.org page, and that is with a triple A in front of answers, and to get more information on abdominal aortic aneurysms. And you can catch Joe's new show, Playbook, on the NFL Network. And of course, you can always turn to the health page at abcnews.com for the latest medical news.
ABC News Now. Good to know.